I want to welcome everyone to our Savvy Ladies Wednesday Wisdom webinar. I'm Lisa Ernst, the Executive Director of Savvy Ladies. If you have any questions during the webinar, please feel free to type them into the chat box. If you are joining us by phone, you can email your questions to info@savvyladies.org. Today I'll be speaking with Nora Simpson, author of Get Ahead and Stay Ahead, Use the Secrets of Your Own Brain to Unleash Your Success at Work. Nora is a business pioneer and creator of the field of experiential neuroscience. Nora has used her own neuroscience-based business tools with more than 125 companies and over 10,000 individuals to generate advances in revenue, profit, productivity, and fulfillment. I want to thank you again for being with us today, Nora.
Thank you so much, Lisa.
So I really did enjoy your book. It combines theory with real life examples, and then you drill down on actual like to-dos or tools. So I love how practical it is for the reader. Can you explain this concept of experiential neuroscience?
Sure, absolutely. So neuroscience, as we know, is the study of the brain and the nervous system. So I'm going to find the slide here that shows the nervous system. So there you go. There's the nervous system. And, you know, the nervous system's job is to protect us from threats. So it generates feelings, sensations, and interpretations about the world around you. And then the brain, which is part of your nervous system, has a special job within the nervous system. Its job is to generate interpretations of the feelings and sensations in your body, and we call these thoughts. So the reason that I created experiential neuroscience is that I realized that only with the combination of thoughts, feelings, and sensations could you really reprogram a group of people or an individual's nervous system. And so it's all about creating experiences, which is why I'm really glad that you brought up the practical tools in my book. It's all about creating experiences for people that will literally help them create new connections in their brain and throughout their body.
Yeah, so the book explains that, you know, our behaviors are and how we manage them through our lives is essentially a combination of how our nervous system functions, also coupled with our experience as a child. You combine those two sort of concepts.
Sure. So one of the most important aspects of neuroscience has to do with early childhood development, and I think I have some slides here that might be fun to look at. So one of the things that I find really fascinating about human beings is that we are the least developed. Here, there's a picture of me and my baby. We are the least developed organisms on the planet when we're born as compared to when we are adults, right? So if you think about what's actually happening in the brain of a baby, when a baby is born, the baby has almost zero, very close to zero connections in their brain compared to how many trillions of connections you and I and all the other adults in the room have, Lisa. So what's amazing about that is that we spend the first 11 years of our lives developing synapses at a huge rate so that we can have a system through which to filter our world. In the first 3 years of life, we develop synapses at a rate of 700 per second. So that boggles my mind. But what's really remarkable about that is that the experiences that we have in childhood, especially from 0 to 11, and at 11, your brain tries to get a little more efficient, but especially from 0 to 11, those experiences are helping to actually put the programs into our bodies, into our nervous systems, through which we filter the rest of our lives. And that includes our work, that includes our careers.
Well, yeah, so that's a pretty fascinating way to think about it. So, and that was one of the things I, enjoyed about the book was that this is really a different way of thinking about basically how we relate in the world, because especially in the work world, we get a lot of feedback and information about like communication styles and behavior styles that don't even touch on this whole idea of the programming that is sort of ingrained in us,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think that there is a way that when we talk about psychology, when we talk about style, communication, leadership, there's sort of this implied uh, sense of judgment that, well, if you have this problem, that means there's something that you need to work on because there's something wrong with you, or there's something that's not working for you that really might be hurting you, et cetera, et cetera, as opposed to really understanding that every single thing you do, whether it's working for you or against you right now, at some point in your life, you did that thing to survive. And even if it wasn't a totally logical thing, like even if you stopped stepping on sidewalk cracks because your mom was sick and you'd heard, step on the crack and you break your mama's back, even if you stopped stepping on sidewalk cracks and your mom got better, and you and I know that your mom didn't get better because you stopped stepping on sidewalk cracks, but a 5-year-old doesn't know that. And so a 5-year-old might think, gee, if I make sure I don't step on sidewalk cracks, then people I love will be healthy. And so that 5-year-old's nervous system is telling the 5-year-old that in order to survive, in order to be surrounded by the supportive, loving people that we all need in order to have, life worth living, now you have to do this thing that at 5 years old, you decided was essential to having people around you be healthy.
Okay, so you get pretty personal in your book about your own childhood experiences, and which were not, you don't paint a pretty picture. So can you give an example to the listeners about like how, because you give a lot of examples in the book, like an example of how, behaviors that you experienced or feedback that you experienced as a child, like managed into your work life as
Absolutely.
an
Well, I
adult.
think, first of all, I just want to say all parents are human. I am a parent and I have parents and I love my parents and I've been in a lot of therapy. And, I'm not, my book is not intended to beat up on my parents. My book is intended to really share that when we can lovingly and honestly look at the things that were the most painful about our childhoods, that will often help us to shift and develop some of our most important skills for success. So, yes, I do talk a lot in the book about some of the most difficult aspects of childhood for me. So, just to give you a couple of examples, when I was a kid, my mom was really stressed out. She had 2 jobs. She was a single mom, and she let it. Unfortunately, it really got to her. And so she would yell a lot, and she would, um, she would just bring a lot of anxiety to any interaction that had to deal with money. So I got to adulthood, and these things are things we become aware of gradually a lot of the time. I didn't realize that I was always anxious about money when I was a child, and I was always anxious about my mom's job. She always seemed to be anxious about work. She always seemed to have a boss who was victimizing her. And so I unconsciously brought that into my working life. And I thought of bosses as people that should be feared, people that had to be pleased, people that if they were displeased, I was going to be in trouble, something really bad was going to happen. And so I had a lot of trouble staying peaceful and calm at work. And in particular, I had a lot of trouble staying focused at work because there were just so many emotions going on for me when I would go into the workplace.
So I'm sorry, did I interrupt you?
No, I figured I'd take a pause and let you talk, and then we'd
Well,
continue.
um, there's because we have a short period of time, I want to sort of focus on sort of because several things resonated with me while reading the book, and also it's natural as I'm reading through this, I'm going back through my own work history and thinking about particular situations that I worked through, some more productive than others, and just really trying to understand. It was kind of nice to unravel something that might have happened 20 years ago, but I think there's like this focus about like work, fear, and then that tribe concept of having a fair amount of support, which, so I want you to talk about the support system you built for yourself, and then this sort of life changing series of events where you lost a job, lost a job, lost a job.
Sure, sure, sure. So first, I should start out by saying that in the book, about half of the stories are mine, and about half of the stories are my client stories. So that means there's a lot of stories of other people. So for those of you out there in listener land, don't think this is just a long memoir. This is actually really meant to have a lot of different stories. This book includes a lot of different perspectives, and I hope that everyone can find, stories that resonate for them. But of course, I'm happy to share my own story. Um, Basically, um, I got fired from 3 jobs in 6 months in 2006. And part of it was that, I'm from New Orleans, and Hurricane Katrina hit New Orleans in 2005. And I spiraled into a really dark place in my life. I had a very fancy kind of job working in international development. It was kind of my dream job. I was all about ending poverty on the planet. And I ended up quitting that job and just kind of bouncing around, really confused as to what I was doing, in part because I was just so affected by the trauma of Hurricane Katrina. So in 2006, I had blown all my savings and I said, okay, it's time to get a job. And the first job I got, I was fired within a couple of weeks. And then the same thing happened with the second job. And then the third job I was able to keep for about 2.5 months before I lost that one. So I turned around after 6 months and realized that I'd been fired from 3 jobs and went, okay, something's wrong. And I ended up joining a bunch of support groups that were just really important for me because I needed a lot of love and a lot of support. I was still in a lot of pain from Katrina. And what was sort of being revealed for me at that point was that some of the pain that got kicked up in response to this really difficult experience of watching my hometown suffer so much during Katrina, some of the pain that got kicked up wasn't actually just pain about the hurricane. It was pain from childhood. It was old stuff that I had never really dealt with, never really come to terms with, never really found the healing that I really needed. And so those support groups became a lifeline to me. And what ended up happening was that I stumbled into the tools that I write about in the book, basically because I needed to pay bills. Like I needed to buy groceries, and I didn't know anything. I didn't know any other way but to basically completely change the whole way that I had been going about my life. And so I reached out for tons and tons of support. I asked tons and tons of people for ideas. I sort of tried to seek out as much self-awareness as I could. Obviously, I had a lot of blind spots. And so I was always asking people, what do you think I'm doing that might be, sabotaging me at work? Sometimes people would say to me, why don't you sit down and make a list of all the things that you think might not be the best, most productive ways for you to be. And slowly but surely over time, I was able to basically invent my way into being a more productive, more peaceful participant in the career world. And I found that as I did, I got really successful and I made a lot of money. And all these people who had been, kind of loving and supportive and been, offering their support as much as they could, they actually came to me and they started saying, what are you doing? What's happening over there? And that's when I started teaching a lot of the tools that I had invented really just for myself. And that ultimately led me to leave my corporate job and to start my business 6 years ago.
Yeah. So, can you share the Everybody Hates You story?
Yeah, sure. So let me preface the Everybody Hates You story with one other story, if that's okay, Lisa, and then
Sure.
we'll do that Everybody Hates You. So one of the things that I figured out after I got fired from that third job in 6 months is, I sat down and I wrote down all the things that I thought maybe would have, had contributed to me being fired. Because until I got fired from that third job in 6 months, those, getting fired like that was everybody else's fault. It was never my fault, right? And so finally, after getting, once I was like, wow, 3 jobs in 6 months, that's probably really bad. I decided to kind of keep, put the focus back on myself. And one of the things I figured out about myself, and this is in the book, is that I had like an addiction to distraction at work. I was surfing personal internet, writing personal emails, texting, taking personal phone calls to such a degree that it was more than half my day. And I think that that's actually why I got fired from that other job, was that people would ask me to do stuff and I just didn't have enough time in the day, since I only worked for 2 of the 8 hours a day, 2 or 3. So, so when I got to that job where I'm going to tell the everybody hates you story, the thing that I committed to was one day at a time, 1 minute at a time, no distractions. And I actually committed it to a friend in the morning and would say, okay, just for today, no personal email, internet, or phone. And I got so much work done, it was ridiculous. And on the third day, I even got promoted. So I thought I was doing really well at this job. And I thought the lady who had hired me was just so interesting and smart and sassy and funny, and I just liked her so much. And 4 weeks into this job, keeping in mind that on my third day of this job I had been promoted and like life felt fantastic. 4 weeks into this job, this lady calls me into her office and she says, "Nora, I called you here because everybody hates you." And I was just like, "Wait, what?" And basically, I'm much more accurate in the book. I don't want to, I guess I suppose I could read you the section, but she basically said, everybody hates you. You need therapy. My 15-year-old daughter is more organized than you are. And, if you don't shape up by, I think she was doing this on a Friday. So if you don't shape up by next Friday, you're out. And, at the time, it was a really painful, really difficult experience to have. I look back on it now and I'm just amazed, because it was such an important moment that led to so much growth for me.
Yeah, so maybe this is a good time to talk about the saber-toothed tiger and that whole idea of fear. And so how, like, your, the, I guess your neuroscience theory is that your nervous system is going to kick in when it's being threatened.
Absolutely. So let's talk about that. So what I can tell you is that, this is who we think we are, right? We think we're stressed, overwhelmed, etc. Oh, there it is. Where'd you go? Come back. There it is. So this is who we think we are. But our bodies think it's coming, I swear. Fuse is just being okay. Our bodies think this is who we are. Our bodies think that we're cave people and that we're living in a time where there are countless threats to our physical survival, because for over 100,000 years, there were countless threats to our physical survival. And so one of the things that I talk about is that, your nervous system has a job to do, and its job is to keep you alive. And so it's going to generate discomfort in your body, and it's going to tell you that that discomfort is coming from outside of you, when in reality, there's only one place it can be coming from, and that's inside you. And it's going to tell you to look for sources of discomfort outside you that remind you of the discomfort that you felt when you were a child. So for me, with this boss, for her to be so funny and interesting and cool and fun to work for, and then to just turn on a dime and tell me what a horrible person I was and how everyone hated me and I was about to be fired, that was remarkably similar to the way my relationship with my mom worked when I was a child. And, I have a lot of compassion for my mom and what she was going through, but it doesn't change the fact that when I was a child, I had an enormous love for this woman who, had a lot of talent and smarts and, fun and silliness to her. And then on a dime, she was suddenly yelling and screaming and insulting me. And when I called my friends after leaving work, when this lady said to me, you're out in a week if you don't shape up, all of them said, get out of that job. This is a horrible person. This is a horrible boss. Find another job. Do it, do it, do it. And there was something in me that said, you know what? This experience was too familiar for me to just run away. Something about my nervous system, something about what I believe is the way the world works and what I need to feel like the world feels familiar, something about that need is drawing me to this lady. And I don't think I'm going to be able to get out of a situation like this until I learn to heal whatever it is in me, in my nervous system from my history that draws me to people like this lady. And that was the day that I decided to again look for what was happening inside me that made me even think that this lady was such a great, fantastic boss, and not at all pick up on the notion that she was capable of saying something so difficult to me, 4 weeks into the job.
Right, right. No, I think that's yeah, it's when you start to think about bosses, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I could relate after I finished the book about, like I said, so many situations I've had in my work life. Which and I think if we could sort of change the conversation a little bit, because I think one of the greatest fears for all of us, but because I focus on women here at Savvy Ladies, is the issue about asking for what you need and what you deserve.
Absolutely.
And I've been in plenty of rooms with women where you say, how many of you actually have ever asked for a raise? Asked.
Mm.
Very few hands go up.
Mm.
So, because that all has to do sort of with that underlying fear that we don't deserve, I
Mm-hmm.
was hoping you would talk a little bit about, you know, that fear that again ties back to sort of, you know, the nervous system and how it is that it, and again, I'll say especially for women, that
Yeah,
it
no,
makes
I'm
it
really glad
difficult
you're
to
bringing
ask
this
for
up.
what we deserve or what we, you know, what we're
Yeah, no,
worth.
it's a real pleasure to be talking in a webinar for Savvy Ladies, because this is a topic that I have enormous amounts of knowledge on, and it's something I don't get to talk about as much as I would like to, because I don't always get to address, groups that are dealing with the issues that women face specifically around money. So I'm really glad that you're asking me this, Lisa. Um, let me take you through a couple of scenarios. So first, I want you to understand that as women, we get specific messages about our worth and about money that men do not get. Not, I mean, of course I'm generalizing, but categorically, we are going to get more messages about our worth relating to what we look like and how sweet and nice we are than we will. This is as children. So we're going to get more messages about what we look like and how nice we are than we are going to get messages about what we've achieved and what kind of value we deliver in terms of results, right? So our value to this day, women around the world, including in our very, very evolved country, the United States of America, women around the world are being told, you are valuable because you take care of someone else. You are valuable because you're a sweet person, a nice person. You are valuable because you're beautiful. And the thing about work is, unless you are a supermodel and you're being paid for your face, most of the time you're being paid for the results you produce. And to be able to say, I am valuable because of these results that I produce. I am valuable because, there's something that I've achieved, not just something, not just some way that I am. That can be really scary for women. And don't forget, every woman has a mother, and the understandings of what it is to be not just a person who has a job, right, but what it is to be a woman in our world, in our culture. We learn a lot of that from our mothers. So if you think about, what did I see my mom sticking up for myself? Did I see my mom, or sticking up for herself, excuse me? Did I see my mom asking for raises? Did I see my mom work? A lot of people never saw their mom go to work or have a job. When my mom did stuff around the house, whether she was a working mom or a stay-at-home mom, when my mom did stuff around the house, did I see her demand credit for it? Did she actually like stand up and say, excuse me, I would like everyone to notice that I just cooked a terrific dinner, right? Um, it's often considered, the sort of old fashioned understanding of being a woman is that you don't ask for credit. You don't ask for approval. You say, oh, everyone, I hope you enjoy the meal. And that's all you say. So just in terms of the traditions and the societal understandings of what womanhood is, that gets programmed into our nervous system too, because we learn it from our families. We learn it when we're 0 to 11. We learn, when we're playing house in kindergarten, that, a mommy does one thing and a daddy does something different, right? So that's a huge piece, and it's only one piece, right? The other piece is that when it comes to money, it's only very recently, and I know Savvy Ladies does a lot of great work around this, particularly Lisa. Um, you know, it's only recently that women, even within the last 100 years, that women have, legitimate material rights to money and property in a way that's absolutely distinct from the previous thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So to be a woman and to stand up and say, here is the money I would like. Here are the dollars that I would like to be earning or that I would like to receive, in whatever the situation is. It doesn't always have to be about a job. That can be a really confronting experience for a woman. However, the good news is that when a woman knows what it is to use these tricks of the nervous system, or I should say these tools of the nervous system, uh, a woman can be one of the most powerful influencers when it comes to money and value in the workplace. And part of the reason is because every human had a mother. And so if you can show up, and maybe you remember, Lisa, when you read about the being the safe parent to crazy bosses. Do you remember that part?
Right. Uh-huh.
If you can show up as the safe parent, if you can actually just a little bit play into what it is to be, someone who has that peace, who has that internal serenity, such that somebody can look at you, even a boss, even someone who is ostensibly in charge of you, and say, wow, you know what? When Lisa walks into the room, everything gets easier. When Lisa's here, I feel better, right? And so one of the things I talk about a lot in the book when it comes to asking for what you want, asking for the money that you want, speaking up for yourself when it comes to raises, promotions, salaries, etc., is that I believe, and I've coached both men and women to do this, but I think it's even more powerful when women do it. I believe it's incredibly powerful to sit down with somebody and say, listen, I love working here. I love working with you, and really affirm all the positives about this person, about this situation, etc. And then say, I love it, and I would like to be paid more. And you don't have to give reasons. You can just say, I love doing what we do. I love that we've achieved all that we've achieved, and here's what I want. And it's totally great. It's great to ask for what you want, because it turns out that whether someone is able to give you what you've asked for or not, just by asking for what you want, you've spoken your truth. You've shared what's really inside you, and by doing that, you are bringing more authenticity to the interactions with the other people in your job, especially the people who have the power to pay you more. And, we all know that when you ask for a raise, you may not get all the raise that you ask for. But as far as I'm concerned, it's always better to ask for more, because even if they say, wow, you're a little gutsy asking for so much, and you say, thank you for telling me that, or I hear you, are you able to pay it? Right? All they can say is yes or no. And if they say no, all you have to say is, okay, well, what can you pay? And just really standing in your power that you deserve to ask simply because you're breathing.
Right.
And
So I just want to add that in the book, you really go through this entire process. It's not like you wake up one morning and say, today is the day I'm going to go ask for a raise. That there is this whole process that actually took you several days, if not a couple weeks, of really making sure that you were developing your confidence about it, maybe changing your neuroscience about it, so that it wasn't sort of this kind of flip thing. And I think that's important in the book, that there was this process that you went through to get to that point.
Thank you, Lisa. I really appreciate you bringing that up. And I guess that's a really great reason that if anybody listening to this wants to ask for a raise, I strongly recommend that you buy the book.
Yeah. I think the other piece of that which resonated with me was, and it was not until I actually read the words that I went, oh, that's so me, is that the discomfort I get when I see other people being uncomfortable.
Yes, yes, yes.
And how hard that is for me to cope with. And so my immediate reaction is to make that stop for
Right,
somebody
right.
else.
Right. I'm so glad you brought that up. Yeah. You as a woman have been socialized to alleviate other people's discomfort. That's what it is to be a mom. You know, I have a 5-month-old here at home. He just turned 5 months today. You know, when he's crying, my job is to help him stop crying, you know, to help him stop being uncomfortable. So the whole process that I talk a lot about in the book about getting peaceful, getting comfortable with the notion that at least at work, it's okay to make people uncomfortable in these very particular contexts. And that you can even um, restore a sense of comfort and safety to them by staying peaceful and not trying to take away their discomfort, but letting them actually live through their own discomfort so that they get to the other side and get to a place where they are more authentic and honest and connected with you, not just you with them.
Right. Great. So we're about out of time. Do you have a few minutes to answer some questions?
I'd be delighted.
Great. And so I just want to remind anybody, if there's if you have questions, you can type it into the chat or send it to info@savvyladies.org. Here's the first question. Whenever I see a job description with requirements, I automatically disqualify myself when I don't meet every requirement. How can I stop doing this so I will feel confident and go after my dream job?
Well, that is a fantastic question. Whoever asked that, great job asking that question. Two things. It's about internal and external, right? Internally, I strongly recommend that you ask yourself, when in your childhood did you feel like you weren't good enough? When in your childhood did you feel like you didn't measure up, and because of that, you weren't, you weren't big enough, you weren't strong enough, you weren't smart enough to play with the big folks, the big girls, the big boys, etc. And really think back to that time and find that kid inside you and really give that kid some love and really give that kid some reassurance that it's okay to take risks and it's okay to get a little outside your comfort zone. And feel free to get in touch with other people and ask them to reassure you that it's okay to take risks and it's okay to get outside your comfort zone. So that's the internal piece, right? The external piece would be to go ahead and actually make a practice of applying for jobs where you only fit some, not all of the qualifications. Like actually go for it and set a goal. Like see if you can apply for 5 not perfectly qualified jobs per day and just be like, I'm going to go for it. I'm going to intentionally be a B+ candidate and see what happens. Because it's doing that practice that will actually help desensitize you to some of this pain that's coming up for you. And incidentally, again, a tribe of support is what it's all about. Call some friends and say, I'm making this goal of applying for 5 jobs a day that I'm not good enough for, and acting like I'm good enough, even though I don't think I am. Will you support me in it? Will you be somebody that I can call at the end of the day and just say, that was so hard, yikes, and live through the behavioral change, because it's the behavioral change that will ultimately help reprogram your system.
Okay, thanks. Okay, another question. I believe I had a good childhood. Do you think we all have childhood issues?
Well, you know what? At this point in my life, I believe I had a good childhood too. I know people who read my book wouldn't believe that, but I do. I believe here's what I believe. I believe that the nervous system in childhood is on a mission to find threats. So if your parents were, more or less able to keep it together, be loving, be kind, take good care of you, that's fantastic. You don't have to worry. You don't have to be like waiting for the memory you haven't recovered of when they all turned into witches or something. Like it's wonderful when we have good parents and we have good memories of childhood. But what I invite you to consider is that wherever there are blind spots for you in adulthood, wherever there are obstacles or frustrating situations, none of that is ever 100% new. And so I invite you to think back to just times in your childhood. Look, you don't have to have such a dramatic story like I have, right? You can just think back to times in your childhood when you experienced a sense of frustration, failure, upset, because your nervous system is on the lookout for threats in childhood, because your nervous system thinks that it has to prepare you for all the terrible threats that you're going to face when you're an adult. Threats like saber-toothed tigers or grizzly bears or, hurricanes or tornadoes. So I promise you that you didn't have a perfect childhood. You had at least a little bit of frustration, at least a little bit of pain. And you want to give yourself permission to think back to what some of those painful moments might have been as they relate to whatever's occurring as frustrating to you in the present. And I just want to put a coda on this, which is that, I thought of this question makes me think of a client I have who has wonderful parents. And he's a very successful guy, and he's gotten to a very, a pretty high level in his career. But in seeking to get to the next level, he became aware, especially after he read my book, he became aware of the fact that his parents never liked to get involved in conflict in public. So if somebody was, rude to his mother when they were out traveling when he was a little boy, on the subway or on the bus, his mother wouldn't say anything. She'd just sort of take the kids away and kind of not get involved. And he realized that he learned from that, and there was a way that he was holding himself back at work because he had just sort of automatically learned that when someone is threatening, you just want to concede whatever the issue is. You want to accede to their demands. You want to let them win. And that was the thing that was holding him back at work. His parents were fantastic parents, but this one particular thing, look, every parent is human. Every parent is going to have fears and pain and stuff, So just this one particular way that his mom, given her situation, it being the 60s, she was a woman, she was a minority, she was an immigrant, like all of these things, it made sense for her that she did this. He wasn't mad at her for doing this, but he realized that it had an impact on him that he had not really taken into account fully. And as a result, it led him to reevaluate kind of how he was approaching certain situations at work.
Great. Thanks, Nora. Well, we're out of time. I want to thank you again. Encourage everyone to read the book. I want to thank you because I got to the end of the book and saw the shout out for Savvy Ladies. So thank you very much for that.
Yay.
And I appreciate your time today, Nora.
My pleasure. And I really encourage everyone to go to getaheadandstayahead.com. You can order the book. You can read plenty of free articles that are about some of these topics. It's a real resource.
Great. Thanks, Nora.
Thanks, Lisa.